So, Gary, now it's important to do one more step. And what we have beyond the basic recipe?
Well, as I talked about in the previous discussions that we've had, we want to get underneath. We don't want to just be on the surface level that the basic recipe does. We want to aim that basic recipe at the details. And there's a metaphor that I like to use that has to do with weeds in a garden. If you want to take care of the weeds in a garden, get them out of there, just like we want to get the negative emotions and negative issues out of our system. With the garden, if you just took a tool and just chopped the weed off at the surface, well, it will appear to be gone. No weed, etc. That's great. But because we didn't really get to the roots of it, chances are that weed is going to grow back. Now, sometimes when you chop it off at the top, it also kills the roots and then it doesn't come back. But usually, as long as the roots are there, the weed comes back again, okay? So we want to be able to get the roots out of that. And there are a number of concepts involved to do that. And one of the first ones we want to go after right now is called aspects. That is, many issues have different pieces to them, different aspects to them, and we need to be able to understand what those are, or we're going to be sometimes fooled about thinking we made some progress where we didn't really. Okay? Let me give you an example. This was years ago. I remember I was using EFT with a lady who had been in an automobile accident. I forgot, maybe 20 years prior. But that automobile accident was still causing her lots of anxiety. Every time she thought about it, she'd get tears, and it was really, really bothering her. And so what I said to her, this is in the earlier years of EFT, I said, well, what about the accident bothers you? And she said, oh, the headlights, I can still see the headlights, okay? Coming at me, the other car, And so I thought, okay. So we did some tap, tap, tap on, even though I see these headlights, okay? Now, what I didn't know at the time was that was an aspect of the bigger problem, okay? And so tap, 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 tap. And I said, well, how is it now? She says, oh, it's no better. Oh, and that surprised me because I'm used to it being much better. So I asked her the question again, well, the headlights still bother you? And that was a fortunate question because I didn't know there were other aspects involved, And she said, oh, yes. She said that there's screams in the car. I can still hear the screams in the car. Well, that's another piece of this problem, okay? So I said, well, what about the headlight? Oh, that wasn't bothersome at all. The headlights didn't bother me. But now it's the screams in the car. So we took care of one aspect. But to the client, and to you if you're doing this for yourself, to you the accident is the accident. And you're not really used to breaking it apart into its little pieces. And so as far as she's concerned, we didn't do anything with her problem because she's still upset about the accident, albeit now it's the screams in the car. Okay? So even though I hear the screams in the car, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, and then I said, well, now how is it? And she said, I am so mad at the doctors and the other drivers. She had a great deal of anger at this. Even though I'm mad at the doctors, I did stuff on it. Even though I'm mad at the other drivers, and have all this anger, and so on. And we worked on all these pieces, these aspects. And it wasn't until all the aspects were gone that she had relief from the accident. Okay? So I'm sure you see this with great regularity, do you not?
Yes. Lots of clients, children that were hit by their fathers. They have the eyes of the father, they have the pain in their legs.
Yes.
They have the rejection of the mother that didn't face the father and block the father. They have lots of
Yeah.
aspect.
And other aspects in that might be the tone of the father's voice,
Yes,
you know, and the rejection.
The smell, sometimes the smell in the environment.
Yes, these can all be aspects of it. And interestingly enough, like in my accident example, in some cases you could say, even though I had this accident, and that actually covers everything in it, it seems okay. And that it actually does happen. But that's not the usual. Okay, the usual is you've got to dig in, get to these aspects, etc. And so that's really, really important to recognize, because oftentimes people will say, well, you take care of a surface aspect. And sometimes, unlike my client who said, no, the screen's in the car now, you take care of a surface aspect, and they say, oh.
And each aspect is related to an emotion. Sometimes in one event, you have anger, you have guilt, you have sorrow.
Yeah. And so, yes, and that would,
grief.
And that would be correct. So, anyway, there's all these pieces. And so, let me go back to my accident example again. If we did some tapping on just the accident, they might get a surface issue, a surface result, and for the moment they think it's all fine. But tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month, no, here it comes, and we didn't get the roots of the problem. We just chopped the weed off at the top. Okay, and so, and like you were saying, I just want to emphasize it again. We can have a certain event in there, like to use your example, when the father hit the child. Okay, the child might have fear in that, but there may also be, once you take care of the fear, the child may have anger about that. The child might also have guilt about that, because maybe they think they caused it. Okay, and so you want to be a detective, and you want to get down to these things. And if you get down to something very specific, and we'll learn why specific is important here later, but the more specific you get, the more you can do. But you want to find these pieces if you're going to be thorough. And that's what's going to set you apart as a graduate of this course from the vast majority of people who do the tapping. They may hear about aspects and they may talk about them, but it takes a skill and experience to get in there and really hear them and start dealing with them and being thorough. This course is going to set you very straight on that, so you will have a very advanced understanding of how this process works.
Generally, I look for aspects in terms of sensations and aspects in terms of emotions.
Yes.
And sometimes beliefs.
Yeah. And they can be in there as well. So sure. So aspects are really important. I'm just going to give you one more example if I can. I was working with a war veteran, and one of the war veterans' problems was he had a fear of heights, because he'd done a whole lot of parachute jumps, and he was just frightened every time he did it. When he was in the war. So we went out on a balcony which was 3 stories high. Okay, and we did it took several rounds in his case, but we finally got him to the point where he could go over to the edge of the balcony, look all the way over to it, and had no problem whatsoever. And so it would seem like, we're really done. Yeah. But what I thought about was, gee, why don't you look way off there in the distance? And you could see the downtown Los Angeles where all the high buildings were. Suppose you were on top of one of those 50-story buildings. He goes, and then he started to get a little upset about that. We weren't thorough, were we? We did it for 3 stories up, not for 50. Different aspect. And then I had him, we were standing right there because the building itself was higher than 3 stories. I had him look up. And when he looked up, whoa, that made him a little dizzy too, another aspect. Okay. So you may wonder, well, gee, how am I going to get to all of these? Well, experience will show you that, but we need to point out to you that they exist first. And experience will help you with that, and you will see more of this as we unfold this course.